Painful one tonight for the Royals. Let's recap it in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, co-hosting, and some producing. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Now, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs have officially concluded for basketball and football, though they're about to get ramped back up again. The sports have stopped sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I just got back from Kauffman Stadium. It's going to be another late night episode here. And I think it's one that is always going to be a pain to do. It's going to be a somber episode. And that's because these last 2 days have been pretty disappointing if you are a Royals fan. And I think for the most part, this has been a series that has felt like a tipping point, if you will. And the Royals still hold a playoff spot. They hold it for another 24 hours until tomorrow night, and they could lose that spot if they get swept for the second time this year, but this time at the hands of the Boston Red Sox. I walk away from tonight feeling a great sense of pain, because there were many opportunities the Royals had that they let slip away. And I think the Red Sox in this series have, gotten a lot of the 50-50s. You hear that phrase a lot in football and basketball, the 50-50 ball, right? If you're playing basketball, and I did for a long, long time, but, those jump balls, the balls that are rolling out of bounds, who's going to be the team that falls on the ball, or who gets to it first and then passes it to a teammate and they can get out in transition. That feels like this series to a T. I feel like the Red Sox have gotten everything to bounce their way, and that's not an excuse for the Royals. The Royals haven't played well enough to get the 50-50 balls. But in big moments, huge moments, in fact, the Red Sox have gotten that key hit. They have had the wild pitch turn into a run. They have had the ball that stays fair by an inch. They have had the broken bat single find the outfield where the Royals cannot. And sometimes in baseball, that just happens. But in this series specifically, it feels extra painful because of the opponent you're facing. This was a golden opportunity for the Royals to bury an opponent. They didn't need to sweep Boston. But damn, taking 2 of 3 from the Red Sox when you already had a 2.5 game lead, it would have made you feel mighty comfortable with that 3.5 game cushion. It's only 1 game, but at this stage of the season, 3.5 feels a hell of a lot better than a half a game like you do right now. This 3-game stretch is not going to dictate the outcome of the season. It is a big series that we are going to look back on. But at the end of the day, it is 3 games. And even if the Red Sox win tomorrow and sweep the Royals, that does not mean the Red Sox are going to the playoffs and the Royals are not. The Royals would be trailing, and they wouldn't see Boston again, so they couldn't do damage themselves. But the season's not over, right? And I think at this point of the season, you should know that whether things were going well right now or they weren't going well, a lot of baseball left to be played. But I don't fault you tonight if you walk away just feeling gutted, Man, I did. I left Kauffman Stadium tonight sitting in that traffic feeling absolutely gutted about the way that game went. To know that they had a 6-5 score in the 8th inning, a 1-run deficit after a 2-run double by MJ Melendez. You knew how bad the Boston bullpen had been, and they couldn't score him. Hunter Renfroe hits it the one place you can't hit it to with a runner at second and nobody out. Adam Frazier, what more can you expect from a guy that's hitting sub 200? And then Michael Garcia, a bat at bat, swinging at a pitch that wasn't close to the zone. I get that it's Kenley Jansen, but it was a bat at bat. And then in the 9th inning, uncompetitive at bat by Paul DeYoung, uncompetitive at bat by Michael Massey, uncompetitive at bat by Bobby Witt Jr. It happens, right? I'm going to take a little bit of what I said yesterday in that episode of It Is Baseball. Good teams are going to be difficult to beat. And I understand tonight, if you walk away feeling like this Royals team can't beat good teams, because this is in the frontal lobe right now. This is on the front of your mind. You feel like after tonight, this team can't win big games when they need to. And this was a massive series for the Royals. And they still, though they can't win this series, they have a big one tomorrow. Oh, my goodness, do they have a big one tomorrow. And I should say more enhanced words or stronger words than, oh, my goodness. But, we got to keep it PG on this podcast, or I'm going to maybe not do this podcast anymore. I might get a hefty fine if I say anything that crosses a line. But tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it in the second segment here, it's going to be huge for this team because you're either going to walk away with a near 2-game lead in the wild card picture, or you're going to walk away without a playoff spot. And that's why it's so big for this team. And that's obvious, right? It's not like I said anything groundbreaking. We all should know at this point how big tomorrow's game is. But tonight, with Seth Lugo on the mound and Brian Bayo going for Boston with his 5+ ERA, look, he's a good young pitcher. But it feels like so many times this season, Seth Lugo or Cole Ragans has come to this sort of situation, has climbed the bump in this situation where you feel like the advantage is on your side, but it doesn't work in the Royals' favor. And maybe that is a bit of the ahead of schedule feel that we all have here, right? The Royals lost 106 games last year. And moments like tonight, we would like to think they can always come through because they're much better this year, but baseball can be unforgiving. The baseball gods are not always going to give you what you want. The Royals left a lot on the table tonight. And shocker, that's what we said about 7 or 8 times in yesterday's episode. Left a lot on the table. And you left Kauffman Stadium tonight just pissed off, right? It just absolutely pissed off. I am. I mean, this is a loss that sticks with you a little bit more because in that 8th inning, I go back to it. I wish I could rewind and you could do it over and have better at-bats in that situation. But you tip your cap and you credit Boston for pitching out of that. You credit Alex Cora for making moves that through these 2 games have been genius. Right? He's managing like Terry Francona did for years in Cleveland and for years in Boston of, our bullpen arm may get 2 outs, but we're not going to let him get the 3rd out. We're going to our closer for the 4-out save here. We want our best guys out there. Alex Cora is managing this series like a playoff series. And as much of a Matt Quatrero supporter as I have been, I'm not sure that he's done the same. We might save that for a segment tomorrow and maybe depending on how game 3 goes of this series. But I feel like Alex Cora has really put a big emphasis on this series, and Matt Quatrero is kind of managing it the same way that he's managed every game this season. And I get every manager has their style, but we have seen a little extra pressure put on the Royals because of the moves the Red Sox have made. They're not afraid to really get creative with their bullpen. Whereas the Royals, they're trying to squeeze an extra inning out of Brady Singer. They're trying to squeeze an extra inning out of Seth Lugo. Tomorrow, we'll see where Cole Ragans is at, but 2-0. Boston's got that series lead, and tomorrow they'll wrap up the series finale. It has been a troubling 5 games for Kansas City when facing the Red Sox, and if they are left out of the postseason picture when it's all said and done, I'm not going to be surprised if we revisit those matchups against the Red Sox in 2024. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, what a big-time moment it is for Cole Ragans tomorrow. I'm going to treat this like a playoff game, an elimination game tomorrow. That's how I'm viewing this for the Kansas City Royals. We'll dive into why next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors today in SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line and free shipping and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Tomorrow is a long ways off, it feels like. Anytime the Royals lose a crushing one, right, doesn't it feel like first pitch for the next day takes forever? I think it's even worse when they have an off day. And I'll tell you this, if the Royals lose tomorrow and they get swept, prepare for a brutal and awful and terrible Thursday because the Royals don't play on Thursday this week and they don't play on Sunday this week. They'll get the Cardinals Friday and Saturday, but they have 2 off days. And that's why tomorrow is so unbelievably important for this ball club in a variety of ways, I think. This is a team that is not spiraling. Let's get that very clear right now. This team is not spiraling. Though it was the White Sox and the Tigers, they are coming off a road trip in which they lost 1 game. Okay, so let's get out ahead of that. Prior to that, yes, the White Sox were on their homestand, but they had a winning homestand. So out of the break, they've been very good. But I understand the panic and the fear of they can't beat good teams. They can't win these series that we need them to. But you also have to factor in there are going to be moments in these final 47 games that the Royals play well. And there are going to be moments in these final 47 games in which the Red Sox do not, and the Twins do not, or the Astros do not. There is going to be a time period where you're buying all in again and you think this is a postseason team, and there's going to be times like tonight in which you feel like it's over. And based on the comments I got on Twitter tonight, there's already a few of you out there that are done, that are calling it quits, that feel like this is the end. This is the inevitable collapse that you've been waiting for. But tomorrow, I think if you want me to paint a little rainbow here and make you feel a little better, I'm not going to tell you they're going to win tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you they're going to come out and play with this tenacity that we haven't seen in this series so far. And I thought tonight I'm not going to chalk it up to having a lack of intensity. The Royals fought hard. They didn't play well at certain points in the game. Massey's error was costly. The play at home plate, the wild pitch, that was costly. Seth Lugo didn't have his best stuff. That was costly. They didn't have good at-bats when they had the tying run at second base with nobody on the 8th inning. Costly. Again, I can go over these scenarios, but they didn't come out there and lose 8-0. I mean, that's something you might be able to stomach a little bit easier when you don't even have a chance to win. But I'm not going to say there was a lack of intensity tonight. There might have been a lack of focus in a couple different situations, but still, a loss is a loss. They are down 2-0 in this series. Tomorrow, though, as I teased before this segment, this is a playoff type of game. You have Cole Ragans on the bump. Cole Ragans is your ace, right? Cole Ragans is the guy you want out there. Cole Ragans is the guy, if you make the playoffs, he's your game one starter, right? And in a dire situation, you want him out there. Yes, more so than Seth Lugo. I love what Seth Lugo has done. Seth Lugo has more wins. He's got a better ERA. He's got a better WAR, I believe, this season, at least B WAR. I don't know about F WAR on Fangraphs. But, Seth Lugo would have a good argument, right, of being a Cy Young contender, of being the best pitcher on the Royals. But for me, personally, I want Cole Ragans out there. I want Cole Ragans against this lineup. And Cole Ragans pitched well last time out against this said lineup. This is what you hope for when you are trying to hold off a sweep. A lot is going to have to go in tomorrow to ensure that sweep doesn't happen. But still, this is a playoff type game that you have here. No, if they lose, they're not done. They're not cooked. Their season's not over. But man, I look at the swing you could potentially have. You walk away tomorrow night with a win. I've always said this: if you lose a series, win the final game so you can take that momentum into the next series. But they win tomorrow night. They have a game and a half cushion instead of being down and chasing a wild card spot. That is a massive shift right there. And if Cleveland loses tomorrow, they'll be 4 games out of first place. So you have that to focus on a little bit, where you can feel a lot better about this series if you win tomorrow. But I also revisit the conversation we had last night, and that's that it was a big test tonight, and it was a big test Wednesday. They failed the big test tonight. I can sit there and say the positives they had. I could go over that list, but they lost, and I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat a loss. Not on August 6th. Okay, not at this point in the season. I can sugarcoat a loss in April. I really can. I can sugarcoat a loss in April against the Baltimore Orioles, against the New York Mets, against the Minnesota Twins. I can do that. Not going to do it here in August because you, the listener, don't want to hear that. And I feel like I owe it to you to not always paint sunshine and rainbows. It has been a disastrous 2 games for the Royals. Whether it was competitive or not, they lost. And this was a series they needed to go out there and win. Very simple, right? They needed to go out there and win a series, and they didn't get it done. But that doesn't mean you should just pack up shop, have your tail between your legs, and walk into that St. Louis series or walk into your off day. It shouldn't mean that. It should mean that you need to go out there and prove to everybody why the first 2 games were a fluke. The final 2 games in Boston were a fluke. We're not a team like that. We can win these big games, and we're going to play well for our ace on the bump. Now, Cole Ragans hasn't been as electric as he was earlier in the year, but this is the matchup I think you want. I don't think I'd want anybody else out there on the bump to hold off a sweep, to avoid the quote-unquote elimination game. We'll treat it as such. And if they lose tomorrow night, no, I'm not going to pack up shop like I just said, cancel the season. I'm not doing that. But I'm going to feel fired up and amped up if Cole Ragans gets the job done tomorrow night. Part of my duties, I feel like, is to keep you listening, keep you entertained. And even when this team has outings like tonight that make you want to rip your hair out, punch a hole in the wall, believe me, I've had those emotions. Right? Just because I haven't been as fired up before or I haven't sounded off on this podcast doesn't mean that I don't feel that anger. I do. I just need to keep a level-headed approach when doing this episode because the reality of baseball is there's always tomorrow. There's always a game that can make you feel better. Right? Saturday in Detroit felt like a nauseating moment where you just wanted to blow up on Matt Quatrero and the bullpen management and Hunter Harvey, and then Sunday made you completely forget about it. Last night and tonight sucked. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that was not what the Royals had planned to open up this series. It's not what the fans wanted. But tomorrow night is huge because if you walk away with an impressive win, A, you feel good about the wild card race again because you have a near 2-game lead against Boston. The Red Sox go on to play the Astros while the Royals take on a slumping Cardinals team. You have that advantage back in your favor. You've got the ball back in your court. But it all starts tomorrow with the man on the mound. Brady Singer couldn't get it done. Seth Lugo couldn't get it done. It now turns to Cole Ragans. Cole Ragans has to be the ace that the Royals believe he is, that the fan base believes that he is. Huge one tomorrow. I'm going to treat it as a playoff game. I'm going to put that type of pressure on Cole Ragans, and we'll see what he does with that type of pressure. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show, but before we do that, we want to thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. But for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Pat Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, when we wrap up this regular season, what should be the defining moment, or how should we define this season? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Our final sponsor today is our title sponsor in FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And tonight, I looked at those odds for the White Sox and the A's game to see if that winning streak or that losing streak would be snapped. And I actually bet against that. I did not go with what the majority was doing and betting some money on the White Sox to snap their streak, but they got it done. Congratulations to them. I can't believe it took 21 games, but that win probably feels really good in the clubhouse in Oakland tonight. But for tomorrow, maybe you bet some money on Bobby Wood Jr. to have more than 1.5 hits in that one. Cutter Crawford shut out the Royals last time around, so we'll see if the Royals can get him in this go-around, a series finale against the Boston Red Sox. Okay, I wanted to do this to round out the show because I always believe on nights like this, there is a time to look inward, to put this season into perspective, and to really focus on where you're at, right? Because I think in sports, I'm guilty of this 100%. I know that every sports fan is guilty when you care enough about the team. You are guilty. I am guilty of getting emotional at times where then in a couple weeks, a couple days, you go, man, that was stupid, right? That was dumb to get that fired up about a game. That was dumb to get that depressed about a game because you know that another game happens. And when that next game starts, you kind of forget about the night before or the game before that, or, you know, even a dramatic win. As that adrenaline hits you, you love that moment, right? But when the next game starts, you kind of forgot about it. And I do think that in these final 47 games, it is a moment, it is a stretch to kind of look inward and know what we are witnessing. Be appreciative of where this team is at after losing 106 games, but also keep in check of what we will be looking back on when this season is over. I think that when that 162nd game rolls around, we are going to have a very specific set of games that we look back on and go, that either got them into October or that kept them out of October. I already said in this episode, I think this Red Sox series, for better or for worse, is going to be looked back on as the one that got them in or the one that kept them out. And yes, I mean that after they've already lost both of these series against Boston. But if they win tomorrow, it can be that momentum boost that you need. It can be that spike that you need, that shot of adrenaline that you need to carry you into the next series. I mean, there are going to be numerous series in which we look back on. The Rockies series, the A's series, the Twins series, the Cleveland series. All of these things are going to come rushing back to us. And that's how I'm kind of envisioning this at this point of the season. Because I think I can sit here and be appreciative of what they've been able to do through these 114, 115 games, right? Because nobody really thought that if they were to be interrogated, they're putting money on it, that the Royals would be in a playoff spot on August 6th, right? I don't think anybody would have put a significant amount of money in that. Maybe you did, and good for you, right? But a lot of people still doubted the Royals because they've never seen a team make that jump from 106 losses to a playoff team, a 90-win team in the following year. There have been teams that have come close. There have been teams that have made the playoffs after losing 100 games, but to lose 106, it's a lot of games to just overcome in the following year. And they've made it a long ways. But I will also say this. If they fall short, and they fall short by a game or two, yes, I think in a year or two, you'll be able to stomach it. I think in the moment, I think a few days, a few weeks after that, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow because there are going to be many opportunities you look back on that the Royals just squandered, that you had really put into your mind this was a playoff team. This was a team that could get it done. Maybe you're not at that point. I look at it this way, and I know that I said yesterday I'm not going to be the gatekeeper of the fan base. I've been waiting a long time again, and I don't want to say a long time because you waited basically your entire life for this team to play playoff baseball, and they got that done in 2014. But my entire life, up until 2014, I hadn't seen them play in a playoff game. So I have experienced a bigger drought. For those of you that grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s, you experienced a longer drought than I had, but you also had a chance to watch those Royals teams in the 80s and in 1980, 1985, some really good teams in the 70s, right? You had your moment to look at that, to watch playoff baseball. And even though it's only been 9 years, it's been a long 9 years. And there's never a guarantee in baseball that you'll be as good the next year. So capitalizing is so important on a year like this. And I think it would go a long way with this organization. I don't think anybody will look back and say it was a failure if they go 86 and 76 and miss out on the playoffs by a game or two. But you will look back and feel gutted that it was a game or two that kept them out. It was a bad series. And everybody has them, right? That's baseball, right? Every team's going to look back and say, man, I wish we were better in that stretch of games. Man, we let that one slip away. And that's the reality in baseball. You're going to blow games. You are going to have stinkers. You're going to get shut out. You're going to get outplayed by a bad baseball team. It's going to happen. When you play 162 of these, you're not going to have your A game 162 times. But I think for as long as this season is and how emotional this roller coaster has been, it's going to be painful if they don't make it. And right now, I know the vibes are not very good. But if they do make it, I think there's going to be a handful of moments that define them. And I almost wonder if those moments that define them are coming up here in the next few weeks. Hell, it could define them tomorrow. What team comes out to play tomorrow can be what defines the 2024 Royals. What defines them when they play Minnesota again, when they face Cleveland, when they face the Phillies, when they face the Yankees, when they're on game 162 and they have a playoff spot or not. That is going to be what defines them. We'll see what version of the Royals we get tomorrow. Okay, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On MLB Podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow, We're going to break down that series finale against Boston and look ahead to another rival in the St. Louis Cardinals coming to town. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.